Hello and welcome back to the construction department here at Research College. So if you've seen some of the videos earlier, you'll have seen how we've managed to take a brick out using a specific method. So now we're going to be talking about mixing the mortar and replacing that brick and making it look like it always existed. So some of the things we're going to need a bit of water, you're going to need some sand and cement. We've also got some mortar plasticizer. So I'll just come a little bit closer. So this is an additive, a chemical that we use to make the mortar more workable. A lot of people will use fairy liquid, but you should not use fairy liquid. Okay. What this actually does is put loads and loads of little air bubbles around each grain of sand that makes the mortar and the compo, what we tend to call it, more workable and easier to use. If you use fairy liquid or Happy Shopper or other brands are available, you can't control the amount of air bubbles that's putting into the mix. So what happens is you'll use it, and if you were to break that mortar joint open a few days later, it would look like a block of aero. It would just be full of air bubbles, and in time that mortar would degrade and crumble, and it's just not structurally sound. So fairy liquid detergents, although they work, is a big no-no. You use the right stuff and you read the instructions on the back to make sure you use the right quantities. This is concentrated, so 5 millilitres does a whole bag of cement. Obviously I'm not going to be using a whole bag of cement, so I'm going to have to gauge how much I use. So obviously I'm a bit used to this, so that's okay, but you really need to read the instructions. It's also an irritant, so you've got to be really careful not to get it on your hands, and certainly not in your eyes. The cost data sheets by Seeker are on the website, so you can read those first to make sure that you fully understand what to do if it was to go wrong. If you use it correctly, nothing's going to wrong, but obviously accidents do happen. So that's the plasticizer. So I've got my empty bucket, and I'm going to mix my compo now, or the mortar. Let's use the correct terminology, the mortar. So the mortar comes in different mixes. So for a facing brick like this, normally it would be 6 parts sand to 1 cement. We would call that 6 and 1. So these ratios, and this is where maths comes into the equation in bricklaying, the ratios are vitally important. Because I'm going to measure a small quantity of mortar to use for lay one brick. So I'm going to be using a measuring jug, and I'm going to measure 6 sand and 1 cement. But if I was laying 500 bricks or doing a big mix, then I would have to do multiples of 6 and 1. So it could be 12 and 2, 18 and 3, so on and so forth. So the multiplication and understanding how ratios work is vitally important. So as I said, I'm using a measuring jug, and it's vitally important that you measure the quantity of each ingredient that you're putting in, because when it dries, it will dry a different shade if you get the mix wrong. So you've got to get it right. So measuring it with a bucket or a container is the only way to do it correctly. When I was a lad, it used to be called a gauge box, but that's going back a long time. You probably won't see gauge boxes anywhere on building sites now. Your good old bucket has replaced that. So I've got my sand there, so I've scraped it off the top. That's a full one. So I'm going to put them in there, and I'm only laying 1 brick, so I'm going to put 3 in there, and then using the measure on the jug, it's only half full of cement, so it's 3 and a half, still 6 and 1. The ratio remains the same, as Led Zeppelin once said, I think. Oh no, that song remains the same. So I've got the contents in the bucket. I've now got my gauging trowel, which is a slightly different trowel with a rounded edge, and that's just easier to mix in the bucket because I'm going to be mixing by hand. So first of all, I'm just mixing the sand and cement together. There's no water in here yet. I just want the sand and cement to be mixed evenly throughout the consistency. It's no different than making pastry for those of you in the food department. Okay, so I'm happy that that's okay. Just going to put a small amount of the mortar plasticizer in there, and now this is the tricky bit. Okay, I'm going to add just a small amount of water. You don't want to add too much water, okay, because what will happen is you'll be tempted to put more water in to make it quicker to mix. The more water you put into your mix, when you try come and lay it, the water will come out of the joint, will come out of the mortar if you don't mix it correctly. And the best bricklayer in the world, or Stoke-on-Trent for that matter, won't be able to lay bricks with bad mortar. So always add a small amount of water at a time, mix it round, and then just add small increments until you get the right consistency. And I'll show you that consistency once again. So all I'm doing is turning it over and over and over. The more times you fold it, the more times the plasticizer is going to be putting the air bubbles into the mortar and making it easier to use. Now it is hard work, and like I say, you'll be tempted because you're getting out of breath and panting a bit like a dog that pants a lot, that you'll want to put more water in to make it quicker. But you've got to resist that temptation and just keep working hard, turning it over and over. Okay, so now you can see there, I've turned that over, and this is lovely mortar. It's like dairy cream. It's not too runny, it's not too stiff, it's just right. And again, that comes with practice. The more that you mix, that's perfect for laying bricks.